So, this is another episode of Kitchen Side where we take you behind the scenes of our agency. And today we're diving into the founders' backgrounds, their career journeys, and how they ended up in content marketing. So, Alex, let's start with you. You majored in broadcast journalism.
No,
is that right?
That's totally wrong.
Journalism, not
Journalism,
broadcast.
yeah. So it
part of
wasn't
it.
technically journalism, actually, and that's confusing because it was housed in the journalism school. So I had to take a couple credits on the J school side, just like 2 or 3 foundational classes. But I actually majored in strategic communications, which was is basically advertising. So there was a separate comms department. It wasn't in that. It was really to kind of set you up for the agency pipeline to join like an advertising agency. So most of my classes were around, persuasive advertising and communications, advertising history. We had one whole kind of like, it wasn't like discussion based. It was like project based class where we actually got put into micropods where there was like an account manager, an account planner, like an analyst and all that stuff. And we actually like worked directly with a real client. We had Land's End come in and actually built a campaign for them.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
So for all intents and purposes, I studied advertising and took a couple J school classes. And the journalism classes I ended up using, I think, a lot more in my day-to-day. Taught me how to communicate using the inverted pyramid of, putting the most important facts first and always asking why and asking good questions. I don't know at the time what I was interested in, though. So that just kind of combined my love of business and comms. So at one time I wanted to be, actually wanted to go into the music business, but that's totally unrelated. I wanted to be an English major, but I also loved business. So I wanted to combine those in some way. So I wanted to get into tech. I joined an early stage startup out of college, pre-seed. It was called Lawn Starter. Still around, still super successful. Still great friends with them. I actually just jammed with Ryan from Lawn Starter last night, played some pop punk covers on the side. And it was scrappy. It was early stage. We're sitting around the table trying to, build an MVP and get basic traction channels in place. So I did a little bit of content and SEO there. It was quite different in terms of our aims. Like we were a consumer company. So we were doing a lot of like digital PR, building like ego bait listicles, the top landscaped colleges, trying to get links from .gov and .edu sites just to try to build up a domain rating. So I learned
Did you do some scholarships
there. We did a scholarship. I think they still do a scholarship. It works like a charm.
Yeah.
I scraped a whole list of like college, I think admissions people and like their emails.
Yeah,
and like I mass emailed everybody.
So
I learned a ton there.
Maybe we should do a scholarship.
For sure. I did it at CXL too, actually. And I think they still do it there. But yeah, anyway, so that was very well-rounded. Like I learned a little bit of everything from like cold calling all the way down to customer support. And then I joined CXL after that. I was freelancing like a lot during that time too. I kind of kept the freelance side of my life open for many years. CXL was like data-driven graduate school for me. So if no one's familiar, I mean, you guys are, but like the audience, it's a conversion rate optimization agency. That's how they started. So I joined and was basically doing content and growth to try to get more leads for the agency. And the blog was the biggest channel. So I basically learned growth through blogging and through content marketing, just because that was the channel of sorts there. Through that,
You've described Pep as your mentor in a way, right?
Yeah, I definitely look up to Pep and still, communicate with him all the time. He's framed a lot of how I look at business and life balance. I think he's done that really well. And also he's like very demanding of himself and others with his bar for excellence. Like he expects a lot, but I think that led me to be a better marketer during that time and a better person. I learned a shitload. Like I've never learned more in my career than at CXL. Did everything from Google Tag Manager implementations to A/B tests to product marketing. Like it was insane, like the scope that I had and kind of the freedom and autonomy there. Went to HubSpot after that, where I worked on like acquisition, and it was this very, very kind of vague, we're going to freemium, we're shifting down to like this low touch model where people can sign up for free products. How do we acquire users for that? So I basically would build out playbooks from 0 to 1 to try to find acquisition channels that would be conducive to freemium, and a little bit of product management at the end. In the last 6 months I was there. And then, when did we launch the agency? Like 3 years ago. So that was like while we were at HubSpot.
Yeah.
So you guys met at HubSpot, all of you, right?
We
Just
all
want to
met
make
at
that
HubSpot,
clear.
yeah. So David and I, we were on the same team, I think, or no, we weren't on the same team when we first started, but we were both on acquisition and growth. And then we were on the same team for a couple months. And
tell the audience how you started talking. Didn't someone ask someone a question and you're like, we're going to be friends?
No, so we didn't start talking.
Yeah, that was not the
how
first
we became
friends.
That wasn't your first interaction?
No, we actually did a group trip, right?
Like, yeah, the first time we hung out was like a group trip to Maine, I think before Inbound.
Yes, and that was the first week that I had joined. So I didn't know anybody. So I met a bunch of people on that trip. And then basically, I think it was like 6 or 7 months later when we were on the same team, we were at marketing kickoff, and it's like 8 a.m. I'm groggy. I've got a cup of coffee, and David saddles up to me and he's like, "Hey man, do you believe in free will?" And thus was born an amazing friendship.
I was definitely reading a lot of philosophy at that time.
So just my type of conversation. And that's basically the career up until this point. There's a lot of like little, splotches and freelance stuff. Like I was doing a lot of CRO, conversion rate optimization stuff and content and growth, but I don't do that anymore. It's now, fully plowing into the agency and building this.
Very cool. So like looking back, like they say you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can connect them looking back. Do you see why you ended up doing what you're doing? Like, does all of it make sense now? Whereas in your early 20s, I guess you're not sure what you want to do. You're not sure where you're headed, or was it always clear to you?
It does and it doesn't. I think if I look back to like my early childhood, like I was always the kid doing like lemonade stands and like I built a t-shirt store when I was in middle school. And even like when I was in a band in high school, I treated it like a business. So I've always loved this entrepreneurship thing. So I think my grand vision and mission has always been to build businesses and just like build things. There's been like veering from that path, and I've caught like the shiny object syndrome, or like gone after the carrot in front of me instead of doing that sometimes. But I think that's always been present, and even in the work that I've chosen through my various career, like my jobs, like I've always picked things that are relatively open-ended and are like solving big problems with uncertain solutions. Writing has always been a throughput through this. Like that's the through line through this. It's always something that I've kind of like maintained, and data analysis. So like there have been patterns. I can't say that I've been very strategic thinking out like what's my 5-year plan and like where do I want to go next? Because every opportunity has come relatively serendipitously because I've been pretty open with regards to like how I network and how I like build opportunities for myself. Like I never sat down and I was like, I want to work for a public company in MarTech. Like I didn't want to go work for HubSpot. Like it just kind of came because, I actually freelanced for them way back in the day. And I kind of got back in touch with Scott Tousley, who was like, hey, we're hiring for this role. And it happened at that time that I was looking for something different. So it's been, I'm not huge into like planning every step out.
Yeah. Well, you build relationships pretty easily. So I feel like that has helped you a lot.
For sure. That's
definitely
been one of the
in your
biggest
favor.
strengths, 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's go on to Allie. You have a bachelor's in marketing and you also studied economics and business. So why did you make that choice?
Yeah, I started my college career undecided, which felt like the ultimate failure. Looking back now, it was literally so just not anything important. But I remember 18-year-old me was like, God, I can't figure my whole life out right now. But if that's not like commentary on how much pressure I put on myself, I don't know what is. So at 18, I was undecided. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my parents own a few businesses and I was a part of them since I was a kid, like running the register and all of that. So I always had a penchant for like operations and business type problems. Like that's what excited me. But I also always loved writing. Like I was the kid at 9 years old that they're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, be a writer, but I didn't really know what that meant. I was always writing short stories. Didn't really make a lot of sense. Every time my family wanted to like send greeting cards, they just gave them to me to like write it out. But I chose my economics as a sophomore because I just thought it was fascinating. Like I really like econ. I like talking about it. I think everyone should know about it anyway. But by the time I became a senior, I was like, I don't want to be an analyst. Like I remember getting into like my 300s and 400s classes and being like, this is my future. And it just wasn't like that type of work that I wanted to do. So I had to stay within like the college of business, you know how that goes, or you like mess up your whole path. And I was a scholarship kid, so I had to be out in 4 years and all of that. So I switched to marketing, and it wasn't because I was like ultimately very passionate about it. It came easy to me. It was interesting to me, but it was also kind of just a way to wrap things up while still kind of pursuing a more creative path. Cause like Alex, I was always curious about English, but being the logical person I am, I was like, I can't get a job with an English degree, you know, that whole saga. So I was like, I'm just going to wrap this up, finish up. When I was a junior, I interned at GE, which is like Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown's biggest employer. It ran in my family, and a lot of people I knew worked there. So I was working on a product team, just kind of it was an internship. So when I graduated, I went into a full-time role that they had created for me. It was actually recruitment marketing. At the time, like, you don't know what you like are doing really. It's just like a job, unless you're like an accountant or something that has like a very clear path. Like Alex's story, it just kind of like, sometimes it just happens and you just make the best of it, or you have a general idea of how you want to spend your time, but that doesn't really always map to a titled role. So I spent about 6 months in this job, and it wasn't for me. And the whole writing thing continued to like push on me. And I was like, gosh, I'd love to spend more of my time writing. So like in my job, the writing aspects were always my favorite. But I knew like buckling down for the 25-year career at GE, like that just wasn't me. It was just a means to, you know, have an income and create relationships and all of that stuff. And at the time, like remote work and all of that was not really talked about. But I remember sitting in my little cubicle, like basically reading Forbes, Entrepreneur, like all these magazines and internet like publications and everything that I really liked. And I kept seeing the name Kaylee Moore. And I was like, gosh, I wonder how she makes money writing. Like, I would love to be writing about business. Because at the time I decided, like, I enjoy marketing, I enjoy business. Like, I like this. I don't know if I want to be doing it, but I really would like to be writing about it. Didn't know at the time they're literally the same thing. Like, writing about business and marketing is still the act of marketing. And I ended up just like quitting my job on my own on a whim around the 6-month mark. Was probably the most like reckless thing I've ever done. It was very out of character for me, like pissed my dad off, like all that stuff. I was on my own, but like my parents, we were so close. So
such a rebel.
Yeah. Again. Yeah. So I started like freelancing a little bit. I was Kaylee's first coaching client. And the only reason I loop her into the story was because that was like a huge turning point for me. She helped like give a lot of structure, and she helped me view being a freelancer as a business, like starting and launching my own business versus just being kind of like this, take these random jobs as they come and make $20 a pop. And so I started freelancing for a lot of brands and companies that she recommended to me. And then I wrote for a little bit for Entrepreneur. And I think my biggest client that was like my turning point was Founder. I don't know if you all have ever heard of that. It was like a job posting on like, I think it was like a copy blogger, something I used to like poke around in when I was kind of in a lull for clients. And I just sent them an email and I was like, I want to write for you all. Here's a test piece, blah, blah, blah. So I was with them for like 6 months to a year, and they were the closest aligned to what I was really passionate about. And I got to write for them. And that's where HubSpot found me. So my hiring manager at the time, it was a LinkedIn message, and I thought it was spam. Like, I ignored it. I remember thinking, because, you know, you get those like random hiring messages. Yeah. And Jamie at the time, she emailed me again. She's like, hey, I just want to make sure you got this. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was a real message. Me, like 22 years old, like professionals, all hell. So I ended up getting the job, and I started spring of 2018 with HubSpot. I really enjoyed my time there, kind of like how Alex said. My job like changed over time, but it was the first time I'd really like understood content as like a marketing function, understood its purpose in, you know, campaigns and the entire funnel. And being a freelancer, there was a lot of autonomy, and I learned a lot kind of because I had to, you know, every day was different. It was kind of just as fearful as it was exciting. So I'm grateful for that time. But until you really see content as like a piece of a larger puzzle and a larger like pie, do you really understand like its impact? And I didn't really get that perspective when I was a freelancer. So from HubSpot, I ended up working at a startup last year for about 6 to 7 months. It was all right, but it was also like one of the biggest, like most uncomfortable lessons I've ever learned. Like it was one of those things, like looking back, I don't know if I would do it again, but I know exactly why I did it. Connecting the dots backwards. And then I started at Shopify like 2 months ago. And at the agency, I don't know, when did you all bring me on? Spring of 2019? It was before COVID.
Yeah, I think 2019. We were working with you as a contractor. Like you were a writer.
We had a trip to Tahoe, I remember.
Yeah.
And then after that, we brought you on.
Yeah, I kept freelance clients on the side at HubSpot. And I was looking to expand my work. And I think at the time we were all kind of like, what else can we work on? Like, what other ways can we flex these muscles? And yeah, I came on as a writer and then head of content and then, partner.
We were blown away because we were working with Wonderkind at the time, and we were like, the quality of the deliverables you gave were just like, are you kidding? This is fucking amazing. So then we learned that you had like greater, aspirations with business building, and that was like, all right, we got to get Allie on board.
That's awesome. There's a great synergy between all of you too. It's like you all bring something unique to it. Okay. Oh, and I do want to mention Kaylee Moore was on our podcast, so I will link to that as well in case anybody wants to listen.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite humans.
Yeah. David,
right.
You have a bachelor's in chemistry and also a background or a breakdance instructor. You were at one point.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into content marketing.
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry part is pretty straightforward. I didn't know what to major in either. I didn't know undecided was an option. I probably would have chosen that if I knew. But yeah, I chose chemistry because that spoke to me the most. I had an honors and AP chemistry teacher, Mr. De La Losa, who was like, he was like the uncle who like set the standard for you. And you're like, I need to fucking meet that standard. And he really motivated all of us a lot. And so I was like, I like chemistry. I guess I'll do chemistry. And then I kind of just did the classes. I didn't take school very seriously. I thought it was easy, and so I didn't study. And so the trick questions on a test fucked me over. So, and I'd look back and I'd be like, oh yeah, I should have gotten that right. But I would get like a C in organic chemistry when I was like, wait, that was fucking easy. How did I screw that up? And then I decided to take it more seriously. I don't regret doing chemistry. I got to take classes like quantum mechanics and thermodynamics and all of that, which were fascinating. There was one time we were in the middle of a quantum mechanics lecture, and there was like some research done where it was like they thought the researchers shot a particle that traveled faster than the speed of light, and we spent the whole lecture talking about how that would completely fuck over all our understanding of physics, which it wasn't replicated, fortunately, but it's fascinating that there are people thinking about that stuff. But in my senior year of school is when I started breaking out of the science and like breakdancing community and more into the business community. And I just thought that was fascinating. My favorite classes were always like literature and literary journalism. And so writing was something that I was really fascinated and interested in. And because I learned that business is pretty much writing and communication, I got drawn to that. And one of the more entrepreneurial things I did was there was this TED Talk called like Before I Die. And it was like, you put up this public wall that says like, before I die. And there are a bunch of lines where people get chalk and write what they want to do before they die. And I ended up rallying a bunch of friends together. We built this huge wall and we hoisted it up, and it went viral on campus. And we got like news reporters coming to see it. And I was like, this is cool. This is marketing. Like we somehow got some hype around this.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's another project I can do? And during finals week, I had a friend who, she didn't have finals. I forgot what her major was, but that's weird looking back. So she just like took coffee orders and delivered them to people, and like milk tea orders. And then the following quarter, I said, hey, her name was Cora. I was like, hey, Cora, are you going to do this again? And she said, no. And I said, well, I don't have any finals this quarter. Or like I finished my finals on Monday. Like I have 4 finals in one day. I like, can I take that over and like do some delivery? And she's like, yeah, why do you need to ask? And so I put up a Google form. I created like a Facebook event. I invited popular people I knew, and then they like put in orders and then share with their friends. And then I was like literally in my college apartment, brewing coffee and tea and then making deliveries. And I was like, this is interesting that people trust me to do this. And then next quarter I did it again. I like rallied together a group of friends and like had this whole operation, like assembly line going on. And I finished my chemistry degree and I even tried to make it work, but I couldn't get any chemistry jobs. And I was like, fuck it. I guess I'm just going to apply for marketing jobs. And I was reading like Quick Sprout and Neil Patel's blog and all these other marketing blogs back then. And eventually got an SEO internship where I was doing like essentially backlinking. So that's why I know about like the scholarships and Gov and EDU backlinks. And I quit that job because I started doing cold calls. And then I got a job doing marketing for a restaurant company. And as I was doing all this, it was like, do the job, learn, and then go to a coffee shop and read and like learn how to do an SEO audit and technical audit and like do a technical audit for free and send it to this person or something, which is how I ended up getting on another person's radar. Contrary to Alex, I think I planned a bit more on my end. I was like, who do I want to work for? And I just researched a bunch of people on LinkedIn and cold messaged them. And then this guy named Eric Sue reached out, who's the founder of Single Grain, had coffee. And I guess I made an impression, followed up. And in my follow-up, I said, hey, I did a technical SEO audit. Here's my findings. And he got it. And he responded back. He said, this is great. Like, here's some feedback. Like, let me know what you do with it. And so I was like, oh, shit. Okay. And so I did a V2 of the audit and sent it back. And he was like, hey, we should talk. And he pretty much offered me a job.
Wow.
And I only worked for him for a couple of months, but it was enough time and exposure to someone who was further along in their career. He's like, I think 5 or 6 years older than us, but he was running a multi-million-dollar agency. He ran very successful marketing teams at like Treehouse. And he was like not that much older. So and he was like Asian American. And so I kind of saw a role model in him. Didn't work out because he was figuring out like stuff with the business. I got laid off. But then I was like, okay, I think I learned enough to feel like I could work for a tech company. So I intentionally looked at tech companies. There was a career board called inbound.org at the time. So I applied for it. I forgot, I think I was reading blogs on how to apply for jobs and stand out. And it was like, you should email them and tweet them and stuff. And so I found a bunch of people I thought who could be the hiring managers and just LinkedIn message and tweeted at them. And then said I had submitted this application. One of them, Anam Hussein, got my tweet, responded to my tweet. And then she was like, I'll keep an eye out for your application. Did an interview over like 2 weeks. And they're like, hey, we want to offer you a job. Can you start? And then I moved to Boston. Later, I found out that Anam literally saw my tweet as she was getting on a flight. And so like when she landed, she saw my application and was like, I learned that she was actually about to offer another person a job, but my initiative like got my foot in the door. I was like, oh shit, like some stuff really is serendipitous. So I got really lucky. Yeah. And then HubSpot happened and yeah, that's
How did HubSpot happen exactly?
I started off on a content team doing blogs and SEO, and then started doing partnerships like co-marketing. And from there, my role became really ambiguous because we were like a separate marketing team that got merged into the main marketing team. And they're like, we don't know what to do with you. And so I just sort of went and did some exploration and came back with a proposal to my VP at the time. And I was like, here's where I think I should spend my time. If you don't agree, let me know, but this is what I'm going to do. And then I was like, I was kind of going rogue on a lot of things and probably stepping on people's toes, which at HubSpot didn't rub people the right way. But I think for some people they were willing to work with a personality like mine because most people weren't doing that. And so got some stuff done, got some new strategies in place. And then eventually was like, I want to do product instead, because everything I want to do has to do with product management. And then kind of started building relationships and learning about that. And eventually started doing like growth marketing, which was more product-y. And as that got more successful, I eventually was able to just make the transition to the product team.